Amy was disabled, and everyone thought I, the fake rich girl, was to blame. My doting foster brother abandoned me on the street, leaving me to fend for myself. Calm and composed, my fiancé used all his connections to make me pay the price. They wanted me to atone for her, to endure torture. Later, my once despised rival returned from abroad. He cleared all the fog, coming only for me. Now you can see clearly who I am. On a rainy night, Amy crashed her car into a highway guardrail. Unfortunately, I was in that car too, but fortunately, she ended up with disabled legs, while I only suffered minor injuries. When I woke up in the hospital, my foster brother and fiancé handed me over to the police. Did you intentionally harm Amy? You knew she was afraid of rain but still let her drive. Facing the interrogations of the two men, I didn't flinch, simply looking at the police officer in front of me. I trust that the police will prove my innocence and reveal the truth to you. As a suspect, I was temporarily detained in the police station eventually. The police investigation concluded that the car accident had nothing to do with me. I was innocent, but those two men didn't believe it. The day I was released from the police station, the sunlight was warm and comforting. Mike was waiting for me under a tree's shade. I didn't delude myself into thinking he was there to take me home. Seeing me approach, he smiled coldly. Jenny, you don't need to come back to my house. Dad was still considering our years of relationship, but since you've hurt Amy, don't blame us for being heartless. In that moment, I felt a bit dazed. It was because of Mike calling me Jenny that triggered so many memories. When I was 8 years old, I fell seriously ill. Despite not believing in any deities, my father went to a temple to seek a master's help, hoping for my recovery. Eventually, the master's words led to me gaining another foster brother. The boy who became my foster brother had protected me for many years. I also had a childhood sweetheart as my fiancé, who was aloof but would show me a bit of tenderness. The time when I was drugged and almost abducted by kidnappers, he saved me. But everything changed on the day of the engagement ceremony. My supposed father was not really my father, and I was an orphan without parents. It turned out that I was a counterfeit rich girl, living in luxury and privilege all these years. When the real heiress returned, everyone's sentiments shifted towards her. More dramatically, I knew that real heiress. She was the ballet goddess at our university, financially disadvantaged but never giving up on her dream of dancing, a role model praised by teachers. But truth be told, I couldn't stand her. When she appeared, my foster brother who had always treated me well started to care for her, and even my top-notch fiancé began to admire her. My foster brother Mike would leave me behind and go hold an umbrella for her on rainy days. He would say, "You were born with so much already, so don't fuss over these little things." During our dates, my fiancé Felix would talk about her constantly. He would say, "She is truly a good girl, if only her background wasn't a bit lacking." Like every breath I took was wrong, I just couldn't understand why. Eventually, I found the answer: everything was predestined. How could the fake heiress have eternal protection? As the real heiress arrived in tears at the engagement ceremony, my 22-year-long beautiful dream came to an end. Coming back to my senses, I looked at the man before me. The once gentle and doting eyes now seemed unfamiliar, replaced with disgust and impatience. What? Are you plotting some wicked plan to harm Amy again? The man's demeanor was disdainful, his face filled with caution. Mike, whether you believe it or not, I did not harm her. She insisted on taking me out in the car. And she crashed it herself. But the man wouldn't believe me. All my explanations seemed feeble and futile. Jenny, since you ruined Amy's life, then let your life be the compensation. These were Mike's final words to me, and at that moment, I didn't expect the man to be so heartless. Leaving Mike's house, I had to give up painting and search for a job that would allow me to survive. I visited numerous companies, but they all rejected me for various reasons. Cleaning, waiting tables, delivering food, but none of them wanted to keep me. Even a small restaurant shunned me. A kind restaurant owner's wife quietly pulled me aside and told me the truth. "Have you angered Felix? I heard that Felix gave strict orders not to provide you with any work. We dare not go against Felix. Maybe you can go to the market?" There are some small vendors there who may not know about this news. I thanked the boss lady and aimlessly wandered on the street. Turns out that cold-hearted man is capable of losing his temper for beauty. I tried many markets, although they didn't reject me because of Felix, they only hired experienced workers. After being driven away many times, a fish-selling granny took pity on me and sheltered me. She let me stay to help handle the fish customers bought. The pay wasn't much, but I was already content. After all, being able to survive, what more could I hope for? The granny gave me an afternoon to familiarize myself with the process of handling and preparing fish. What seemed simple under the granny's guidance became extremely difficult in my hands. But I had to learn, I had no other option. After a while, from being clumsy and cutting myself at the start, I was able to handle various types of fish. My hands, soaked in water for a long time, started to swell. I just gritted my teeth and endured. Eventually, my hands completely adapted to this environment. Just when I thought life was slowly getting better, Felix's sudden appearance dragged me back to hell. I was quickly handling the fish in my hands with my head down when a sudden shadow made me think it was a customer coming to buy fish. "Hello, here to buy some fish?" "Don't worry, the fish in our stall are freshly caught every morning, very fresh." "Are you making soup or cooking?" "Once you've decided, I'll help you prepare." It wasn't until the other person didn't respond for a long time that I gradually realized something was wrong. Raising my head, Felix, dressed in a tailored suit, was standing in front of the stall. The man exuded an aura of luxury, completely out of place in this bumpy vegetable market. He frowned slightly, raised his hand to lightly cover his nose, as if the fishy smell from my stall was bothering him. I couldn't help but stop what I was doing, awkwardly hiding my hands behind my back. "Felix, long time no see, what brings you here?" A sour feeling spread in my heart. It had indeed been a long time since I last saw him. "Jenny, don't bother pretending, I already know what kind of person you are." Although he used to be cold-hearted, now he showed even less mercy towards me. "Today I'm here to tell you, as long as I'm alive, you won't have a place to stay in this city." My mouth hung open, but I couldn't make a sound. I could only watch Felix's figure gradually move away. But after a while, the man turned back. "Process a fish for me. I want to make soup for Amy and give her some nourishment." His expression was indifferent, but I sensed a hint of sarcasm. "What? Don't want to do it? If you do it well, maybe I'll consider giving you a chance to keep this job." I swallowed hard, as if that could rid me of the bitter feeling. How could it be? I picked the largest fish from the tank, skillfully handling it. But no one would know the willpower I used to control my trembling hands. "Your fish is ready." I handed over the bag, but the man didn't make any move. "Give it to him." With just a glance, someone quickly reached out to take the bag from him. "I find it dirty." At that moment, I couldn't quite describe the feeling. Was it my hand awkwardly hanging mid-air, or was it a sudden suffocating feeling enveloping my whole body? I couldn't understand why things changed so quickly. Felix kept his word, showing no mercy. I was dismissed by the granny, and as I was leaving, she quietly slipped me a few coins. I knew it wasn't her intention, but I also understood the weight of Felix's words in the entire city. Just as I was sinking into despair, a phone call came. "Jenny, with our many years of friendship, I can't bear to see you in dire straits. Tomorrow, come to Spring, I've found you a big job, just a waiter at a small banquet, for 3,000, will you come?" The phone call was from a friend in my circle. We've known each other since high school. Without hesitation, I accepted. It was a rare opportunity for me now. Spring is a high-end dining club, only the rich and famous can get in. I explained my purpose to the reception and was led to change into a waiter's uniform. "Today you just need to serve the VIP rooms, make sure to meet all the guests' needs, got it?" I listened carefully to the manager's instructions, silently determined to do this job well. Who would have thought, as I pushed the door open, almost all the faces were familiar. The most eye-catching among them was Amy, surrounded by two men, Mike and Felix, each with their own unique qualities. She sat in a wheelchair, her face pale, her figure weak, looking fragile. Mike and Felix stood protectively behind her, looking guarded. What do you want now? This time I won't let you hurt Amy. Hearing the unconditional protection of the two men, all my grievances turned into a bitter smile. If they knew what happened on that rainy night, they probably wouldn't favor Amy so much, right? Inferior? I don't think so. As long as the outcome is what I want, that's all that matters, right? Do you believe those two idiots will unconditionally stand by my side? Amy laughed at me, with a crazy look in her eyes that hinted at an impending storm. I saw Amy crash the car into the fence with absolute determination. Now, she's pushing two men aside and smiling gently at me, saying, "Jenny, don't blame them. I've already forgiven you. Amy, you're always too soft-hearted. If you have any grievances, just speak up, I'll back you up." Felix didn't say a word, but I know he's the most vindictive and cunning one. It turned out that the straight-backed girl I used to be was now bending down in humility, serving as a waitress. Is this still the proud young lady I used to be? I forgot, I'm just a fallen nobody. Thankfully, our true heiress arrived just in time, or else Felix might have mistaken a wooden for a pearl. Those who used to show me such respect now turned against me. Took a deep breath, pouring tea for each of them. I heard she once gave Felix a jar full of stars. It was filled with cheesy love notes. I trembled, dropping the teapot to the ground, shattering it. How could you serve like this? I filtered out everything else, standing frozen in place as if struck by lightning. It was because the familiar voice belonged to someone I knew very well. The one who recommended me for this job was my high school classmate and longtime friend. I had confided in her. I never expected her to make a mockery of my heartfelt words. The next moment, I uncontrollably looked at Felix. I stared at him intensely, trying to find even a glimpse of tenderness on his face. Not just me, it seemed like everyone's gaze was on him. Love notes in the stars? The man spoke up, and I couldn't deny feeling a hidden sense of anticipation. Disgusting. In that moment, it felt like a knife was repeatedly stabbing my heart. I knew it. How could Felix be interested in a nobody? As everyone snapped out of it, they started mocking me. What are you standing there for? Clean up quickly. It was not until then that I realized the tea had splattered everywhere, with debris all over the floor, a mess. Sorry, I'll clean it up right away. I quickly bowed, swiftly starting to clean up the mess on the floor. Don't be too hard on Jenny, everyone. It's her first time doing this kind of work, she's bound to be a bit clumsy. Amy maneuvered her wheelchair to me, kindly helping me out. Here, let me help you. I'm used to this kind of rough work. A woman's words are like poison wrapped in honey, coming close won't end well. You don't have to pretend to be kind. I waved my hand, but it seemed like I was misunderstood as being harmful to Amy. Stay away from Amy. A strong force pushed me to the floor. My right wrist happened to hit the shards of the teapot. Searing pain struck, and blood poured from the wound. I stood up, holding the injury, while Mike protected Amy by his side. The man who used to care for me at the smallest hurt now caused me harm. Suddenly, the door to the private room was kicked open. A man appeared in front of everyone. Jenny, remember this time. I'm your savior. Thinking of Richard, I realized we hadn't seen each other for about 4 years. On the day of our high school graduation, he was sent abroad by his family to study business at a university. He and Felix were polar opposites. Felix was a top student in academics, while Richard was often skipping classes and getting into fights. As the class monitor, I often worried about Richard's assignments. I had figured out Richard's favorite spot to sneak out of school. Every time I couldn't find Richard, I waited for him under the chestnut tree behind the school. What are you doing here? I startled Richard, almost making him fall from the tree. Jenny, why are you always so idle? The boy jumped down nimbly. Richard, stop talking back to me and get back to class. Though he still had a rebellious look, he obediently went back to class with me. After the years, his youthful face had matured. Surprised, I exclaimed, Richard? Who turned you into this? Richard's face turned cold, radiating a fierce aura. I'll make you pay. Met with a worried gaze, my first instinct was to dodge. It's just a minor accident at work, it's nothing. Nothing? Jenny, I know all about your situation. The man gently draped his arm over my shoulder, trying to reassure me. Let's go, I'll take you to the hospital. A painter's hand can't afford any mishaps. Richard, are you deliberately against me since you've come back? Felix stood between me and Richard. Surprisingly, are you such an expert at seducing men? The man gazed at me openly, full of mockery. And the painter, do you know she's the reason Amy can't dance anymore? Good riddance. This was the first time I had seen Felix lose his composure. He used to be so composed and restrained. Clutching my left hand unconsciously, I anxiously looked at Richard. Felix, I've long been fed up with your fake gentleman facade. I don't care how you put it. I believe in Jenny. At that moment, it's fake to say I wasn't moved. It's heartwarming that someone still chooses to believe in me. Thankfully, the doctor said as long as I take good care of my right hand, it won't affect my painting. Jenny, this time you must remember, I am your benefactor. I couldn't help but laugh lightly. Richard now looked just like a tail-wagging little dog. Richard, thank you. The man blushed, looking awkward, and awkwardly changed the subject. I heard that Felix has ordered the city not to offer you any work. Richard stared at me intently, as if wanting to catch every expression on my face. Jenny, I'm not afraid of him. I just came back to the country and happen to need a little assistant by my side. Are you interested? The man's face was full of anticipation, making it hard to say no. Okay. I promptly agreed without any hesitation. But I never expected my workdays to be so easy. Getting up later than the boss and eating better than the boss. Richard, you're the boss after all. Every time I said that, he would avoid the topic, claiming it was for my own good. Jenny, if you still feel guilty, there's a banquet the day after tomorrow, and I happen to need a female companion. Will you go with me? The tone in Richard's voice had a hint of playfulness. All right, I'll accompany you. It wasn't until the car pulled up in front of a familiar door that I realized Amy's family was the host of this banquet. Perhaps sensing my hesitation, the man firmly took my hand and placed it on his arm. Don't be afraid. I brought you here to regain your confidence. Richard's attitude was unusually firm as he led me into the banquet hall. I was forced to shuttle through the crowd with him, and Richard introduced me to everyone he met. This is my fiancé, take good care of her, everyone. Richard. I whispered his name, pinching the soft flesh on his arm gently. Who is your fiancé? Jenny. Lower your voice. Richard leaned in suddenly, explaining in my ear. It's a strategy. Felix wants to corner you with no way out, but I won't let him have his way. His warm breath reached my ear, making it turn red. Let's maintain some distance when talking. Blushing, I turned my head away and popped a small cake into my mouth. Unbeknownst to me, the intimate conversation between Richard and me had already been noticed by some attentive observers. As we reached the final stage, we greeted the hosts of the banquet. Jenny. Amy's father, seeing me, went from chatting with someone to chilling with a cold expression. What are you doing here? Jenny, I've raised you for 22 years, isn't that kind enough? Can't you have a little conscience? Don't disturb me and my precious daughter Amy anymore, okay? The accumulated emotions reached their peak in that moment, shattering the psychological defenses built during this period. He used to look at me with a loving face, pampering me, saying, my precious daughter, whatever you want, just tell Daddy, I'll always be your strong support. Now, I can recall the scene vividly. But now everything has changed, and I realized the fatherly love I enjoyed for so many years was actually stolen. Uncle, this time Jenny is accompanying me as my fiancé to the banquet, please show some respect. Amy rolled her wheelchair over, hugging my arm and acting coquettishly. Dad, I have forgiven Jenny already. Not only that, I want to thank her. She's been by your side for so many years, just like a warm little coat. Besides, Dad, Jenny has had it tough too. Do you remember the fish soup I served you last time? Felix said Jenny personally prepared it. The woman's voice wasn't loud, but to those paying attention, it was perfectly audible. Is Amy not deliberate in this? I don't believe it. Perhaps Felix's intimidation was strong enough because people around us started whispering. Richard's fiancé sells fish? How embarrassing. The man reassuringly squeezed my hand and said, anyone spreading rumors about my fiancé will have to deal with me, Richard. His gaze scanned the crowd, gradually calming them down. Amy then pretended to apologize for her slip of the tongue, looking somewhat remorseful. Jenny, you spoke the truth, no need to apologize. Felix then leaned in, putting his arm around the woman's shoulder, and shot me a harsh glance. A woman like Jenny can only win a man's favor using some low-class means? The man's words were firm, but what he didn't know was that Amy, whom he adored, was the one who loved to employ some despicable tactics. And you, Richard, after all these years, you're still as foolish as ever. An invisible tension gradually spread between the two parties facing Felix's provocation. Richard showed no weakness. Felix, aren't you tired? After all these years, your fake facade must be permanently etched on your face, right? I think you even have another problem, blindness. As Felix's face darkened abruptly, a slight smirk appeared on my lips. Seeing Felix being taken down a notch now made me ecstatic. Let's go home. Without waiting for my response, Richard grabbed my hand and led me away. Only when I realized I had addressed him too intimately did I react, but by then, I was already back at Richard's house with him. The man took a bottle of wine from the liquor cabinet and pulled me to sit down. Jenny, just have a bit of wine with me. Come on, just a bit. I looked at the man's flushed face and couldn't help but wonder. He clearly hadn't drunk much at the banquet. How did he end up so drunk at home? No, Richard, you can't drink anymore. I refused the man firmly and suggested helping him to bed. Jenny. Baby, just have a little drink with me, okay? Richard didn't know when he learned to act cute and pester people. If I didn't agree with him, he would just keep muttering. Richard. Stop calling me that. I had never been close to the opposite sex, and Richard calling me baby made me feel warm all over. Then just have a little drink with me. I reluctantly agreed to Richard's request. I only allowed him to have a small glass, hoping he wouldn't get drunk and uncontrollable. Richard indeed only poured himself a small glass and sat on the couch like a well-behaved child, sipping from it. I watched him like that, and somehow, there was a hint of tenderness in my eyes. After some time, he set down the glass. His eyes sparkled as he looked at me accusingly and said, "You foolish woman. Not only are you foolish, but your eyes are also not working." I thought he was just talking nonsense because he was drunk, so I patiently reassured him, "Okay, Richard, didn't we agree? Just finish your drink and go to sleep. You're drunk anyway. I'm the one who saved you, you know." Why? Why did you wake up to see him as the first person? At that moment, I felt like I had been struck by lightning and frozen in place. The clues from the past seemed to connect to form an answer. When I was unconscious, the first person I saw when I woke up was Felix, whom I naturally took as my savior. However, I had ignored the unnatural look on the man's face at the time. And on the day I returned to school after recovering from my injury, Richard aggressively said to me, "Jenny is really stupid, huh?" At that time, I was still immersed in the tender gesture of my fiancé who had sacrificed himself to save me, and I did not notice anything wrong with Richard. Looking back now, everything made sense. I was truly foolish. The tenderness I thought belonged only to me had been shamelessly stolen by him. Seeing Richard already passed out from drunkenness, swaying back and forth, I raised my hand and embraced him, gently running my fingers through his hair. This time, I won't make the same mistake again. The next morning, when I opened my eyes, I saw Richard standing by my bedside. "I drank too much last night. Did I say anything stupid?" An anxious look came over the man's face, tempting me to tease him. "Well, Richard, you must think about it. Did you say anything silly?" Richard blushed deeply and stuttered, I was just drunk." His threats held no power over me, but I went along with him. "I won't bring it up again. As for that matter, if Richard is not ready to tell me the truth, I am willing not to ask." Near noon, an unexpected person called me. "Come home and take your things." Mike's voice was calm, revealing no emotions. "Mr. Mike, everything I had before was given to me by you, so there shouldn't be anything left for me to take, right? Don't misunderstand. It's your paintings. I don't want Amy to see your paintings and bring back painful memories." "Oh, I see. Are you afraid Amy will remember her leg that can't dance anymore because of her own actions when she sees my paintings?" After some consideration, I agreed. "When would be convenient?" "After 3 o'clock this afternoon. Amy has an appointment for a checkup." "All right, I will be there on time." I told Richard about this and he simply said, "I'll take you there and wait for you at the door." When we arrived at the gate, he took out a necklace from his pocket. "Wear this." His expression was serious, and I couldn't refuse. I just nodded and let Richard put it on me. When I got out of the car, Mike was waiting not far away. "Let's go." I followed the man back into this once familiar home. I quickly chose the painting I wanted to take. "Just this one?" "Yes, this one is enough. You can handle the rest however you want." Most of the paintings in the studio were portraits of Felix since high school. Looking back, I wished I could slap myself. I held the one painting that had nothing to do with Felix, feeling a mix of emotions. "Jenny? What are you doing here?" Mike panicked for a moment and explained, "Amy, she came to pick up her painting and will leave soon." I wonder why the door to the studio, which is always locked, was open. Today, the specialist who was supposed to re-examine me suddenly went abroad, so Felix brought me back here. I didn't want to stay here any longer, especially since Richard was waiting for me, so I tried to leave. "Jenny, why are you in such a hurry?" "I've never been allowed to come into the studio, and now that I have the chance, I'd like to admire your masterpiece." "Is that the painting you're taking with you? You don't want the others?" Jenny manipulated the wheelchair, smiling as she approached me. I knew the devil hidden beneath the angelic face of this painting. "Yes, just this one. If there's nothing else, I'll leave." But before anyone, including me, could react, Amy lifted the canvas, and the smile on her face froze. It was a portrait of Felix from my 18th birthday, inviting me to dance under the spotlight. She revealed one canvas after another, each showing Felix at different stages of his life. The Felix who had grown up with meth atmosphere grew silent for a moment, but not for me. I have absolutely no feelings for Felix anymore. So, is this the reason Mike has been hiding from me all along? Has Mike's heart always been with Jenny? 2 clear tears slide down Amy's cheeks, her eyes full of disbelief. Then, she turns to look at Felix beside her. "What about you, Felix? Do you still hold a torch for her?" The woman looks despondent, making it hard not to feel sorry for her. "No, Amy, I really only love you." "Amy, I just asked her to come back to retrieve a painting, nothing else." I watched the two men explain as if it were a show. Amy was right about one thing. They are both such fools. "Enough, both of you, shut up. Leave, I want to talk to Jenny alone." When I heard Amy's words, alarm bells went off in my head. This woman must be up to something, trying to set me up. The two men left reluctantly, but one thing was clear, they both gave me a threatening look. Once everyone was gone, Amy didn't need to pretend anymore. "I didn't expect you to come back clinging to Mike. I have underestimated you. But rest assured, this time I will bring you down to the ground, and you won't be able to climb out. Look at that, this is the real Amy. What low tactics are you planning to use this time? I already see through her, it's just a matter of using self-harm methods to pull me into a game. Low tactics? I'll trade your being kicked out of this family for my 2 legs. I'll make everyone despise you. Why? I am the real heiress, yet they still want to keep you, this fake heiress. You've stolen my glory and wealth for so many years, now I want you to taste the life of being ostracized, without parents." Amy looked mad, and in the end, she burst out laughing. "Well, now I can finally replace you." My heart started to panic. I cursed in my mind, this woman is insane. She slammed her hand hard against the wooden frame of the painting, and soon blood appeared. She screamed, and the men guarding outside quickly rushed in. Seeing the chaotic scene, I felt speechless. Last time it was a leg, now it's a hand. Amy really stops at nothing. Jenny, I will give Felix to you. It hurts a lot, I won't fight you anymore, can you spare me? Tears welled up in the woman's eyes, making her look pitiful. Amy, I won't go easy on you anymore, you must pay the price. Amy, what nonsense are you talking about? I only love you, I despise that wicked woman. Here we go again, another annual drama. How can there be two blind people here? A mocking voice came, and I looked towards the door. Richard, how did you come in? The man took my hand and examined it carefully before he relaxed. You are just watching the show, why didn't you call me? Two real blind people plus one who talks nonsense with eyes wide open, 3 people are enough to stage a drama. Richard's mouth was still venomous as ever, leaving people speechless. But now, I am tired of this drama, isn't it time to end it? The man pressed a button in his hand, and my conversation with Amy was clearly recorded. Amy's face suddenly turned pale, and she shouted, "It's all fake. It's all edited." Richard threw the device aside. Amy didn't care about her wound and lunged from the wheelchair. But it was too late. Richard and I didn't care about what happened next and left the house. Later, I heard Amy went crazy and was sent to a mental institution abroad. Felix and Mike visited Richard's house many times, but I never saw them. Because I was going to marry Richard, busy preparing for the wedding, of course, I had no time to see irrelevant people. On the wedding day, Felix and Mike showed up. Mike gave me a big wedding gift, saying it was for my dowry. It was Felix who ran up to the stage with a jar of stars during the vows. Jenny, it's all my fault, I just realized my feelings for you now. I was wrong, look, I folded these stars for you one by one with my own hands. Each one has words written for you, just like the ones you gave me back then. He presented the jar to me as if offering a treasure, looking at me expectantly. I took it and smashed it hard on the ground. The jar shattered completely, stars scattered all over. I laughed and said, "Thank you for your wedding blessing." The man's expression froze, his eyes filled with disbelief. The girl who once folded a jar full of stars for Felix had died on the day he called her disgusting. Felix didn't give up, his voice trembling. "Jenny, don't you remember? I rescued you from the kidnappers." I never expected Felix to be so shameless as to bring this up. Felix, do you feel disgusted with yourself? Stealing credit like a thief for so many years, doesn't your conscience bother you? The man's expression slowly turned gray and lost all anger in an instant. You know it now. Felix slumped to the ground, looking defeated. Richard, with a cold face, ordered the guards to take him out and continue with the wedding ceremony. Do you want to take this lady as your wife, love and cherish her for a lifetime? I do. Do you want to marry this man, love and be loyal to him for a lifetime? I do. Amidst a shower of flower petals, Richard and I embraced, and he whispered in my ear, "The moonlight of youth finally shines on him."